Hello, my friends. Is it Friday already? Is it really? Wow, we made it to Friday. We made it to April 1st. Happy April Fool's Day. Happy birthday to Christian Finnegan. Reach out to him on Twitter and wish him a happy birthday. He joins me along with Ophira Eisenberg on today's show. You can see all three of us. Tickets still available for our show Saturday, the 2nd in Beacon, New York at the Howland Cultural Center. It's going to be a really fun time. Looking forward to seeing a bunch of you I know are already going. If you can make it, if you're anywhere near Beacon, New York, which is about an hour north of New York City, we would love to see you. It's going to be a really good time. Also joining me today, David Frum, the Frummy. Great conversation with him about his latest at the Atlantic, and I guess that's all I got to say, really. It's the Friday show. I'm psyched to have you here listening. Thank you for pressing play, and please support this show with a paid subscription if you haven't already. What else? That's it. That's all I got. I will get to the interviews now. Coming up, Christian and Ophira to wrap up the week and have the final word on the comedian's point of view of what happened to Chris Rock at the Oscars last week when Will Smith smacked the shit out of him. But right now, it's a conversation with David Frum. David Frum is a staff writer at the Atlantic. I read everything he writes over there. He is an author. He's written several books, of course, about Trump specifically. His latest couple books, he was a speechwriter for President George W. Bush. And while David Frum and I don't agree on everything, I certainly love what he has been doing the last several years. Always a great conversation. Unfortunately, I had some major audio issues. I couldn't make it work. So it's like almost a not great phone connection, but it's such a great conversation. I think it's worth it. So hopefully that's not an issue if it's in your earphones. I was listening on a speaker. So hopefully that's not a problem because it's a great conversation. I'm really happy about this. I learned a lot. I love his perspective on things. He is on Twitter, by the way, at David Frum. Get his book, subscribe to The Atlantic, and here we go right now with the second to last interview of the week here on Stand Up. It's David Frum. By the way, I just suggested one quick thing I wanted to ask you. I suggested somebody watch your debate with Steve Bannon, which took place in your home country of Canada.
Yes.
I know I've talked with you about it. Would you mind me asking just your feelings on how do you think that went?
I think I'm really happy about the way it went, and I mean there was a glitch at the end with the way that they did this counting about who you thought won the debate, and it was the first time they'd ever used an electronic rather than a paper system. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people out there who are advocates of paper balloting will be able to nod with an "I told you so" satisfaction that it went completely pear-shaped. So it just went screw there. They lost the count. The count produced a false number because the machine had counted the answers to a different question in a strange way. But what was, for me, the important part about that experience was the debate was held on the Saturday before the Tuesday vote in 2018. In front of about 3,000 people in Toronto. And the room was, of course, I mean, most Canadians are very anxious about, or were and are very anxious about Trump, threats to trade, threats to democracy, threats to security. Canada benefits from the American security umbrella, benefits from free trade with the United States. And what I was hoping to give them was a feeling of confidence before the Tuesday vote that the worst of this might be about to be behind the United States and the world, that there would indeed be a check. And that's what happened on that Tuesday. And I think a lot of people found the event inspirational for that reason, because I was giving them confidence at a time they needed it.
I love that, and I've suggested a lot of people listen to it, and I feel like I talked with you about it, but I just wanted to get your take on it again, and I appreciate it. Do you respect his intellect, Steve Bannon?
Well, that's, I would say partly the answer is the Batman answer. If only those powers had been used for good rather than evil. But he is kind of a flim-flam artist.
Yes.
And he's kind of a pretend intellectual. That is, that Bannon impresses a lot of journalists because he references a lot of books and authors. But if you yourself have read those books and authors, you realize he hadn't read them. I mean, like anybody can Google Schopenhauer. You know?
Yes, right. That kind of, that kind of intellect. I do. That's what I do.
And even with a little help from Google pronunciation, you can learn how to pronounce Schopenhauer. But that doesn't mean you actually know what you're talking about. And by the way, and even if you did, that doesn't mean you're right. But
that's one thing I haven't done a good enough job of is learning how to pronounce certain brilliant authors and thought leaders that I could then pretend I was familiar with their works. David Frum.
It's a Wittgenstein.
There's a lot of that happening right now, right? With the Russian files, like a lot of pronunciations there. You can. I'm going to do better to try to read into people's pronunciations.
Right.
I want to ask you one larger question, then get specific with what you've been writing at the Atlantic. It's a lot of really good stuff. Folks should always read what you're writing. But because of what's happening in Russia, in Ukraine, with Putin's invasion, as I call it, do you, in the larger view of things, has anything changed? You've written so much about autocracy versus democracy, authoritarianism. Do you think that Putin's invasion has changed the trajectory of where we are headed as separate nations, much less in the world, away from democracy towards autocracy? Do you think anything has changed in the kind of, I don't know if that's a world order question, but what, if anything, has changed as a result of what a lot of people are saying was him doing a terribly stupid thing that's not going to play out?
I at the top of my Twitter feed, I've pinned a tweet that tries to sum up one thing, and maybe the most important thing that I think has changed. It says, everything they, meaning, well, everything they wanted to perceive as decadent and weak has proven strong and brave. Everything they wanted to represent as fearsome and powerful has revealed itself as brutal and stupid. Because a lot of the enthusiasm for Putin on certain parts of the right and certain parts of the far left, it was animated by hatred for the United States and democracy, but it was also animated by a kind of power worship, that Putin projected himself as a bully, and everyone who's been through high school remembers that bullies always have sidekicks who laugh at their jokes. And so Trump and Tucker Carlson and so on, they always have, Putin's sidekicks, the henchmen, the people who laughed at his jokes, even if the jokes weren't funny, and they never were.
Yeah.
And then when the bully sort of rolls into the schoolyard, picks on someone who thinks is a smaller kid who's been keeping to himself, and the smaller kid turns around and breaks the bully's nose with a single punch. Yeah, that has an impact.
Nowhere culturally does what you just said play out more and probably more accurately than in organized crime and crime gangs. That guy, the leader, gets those laughs. I've always noted that as a comedian, even when they're not funny. That's also true of comedian Artie Lang. We were all on tour with Artie Lang. He's this big deal. Sometimes the shit he was saying wasn't funny but we laughed because he's the leader. Yeah. So I totally get what you're saying. And now where are we at with the schoolyard bully to continue? Well,
Russia has not yet, I should say Ukraine has not yet won this war, and whether it will win in any meaningful sense, it remains very much a question. But for sure, Russia has lost all the war aims it started with, and probably about a third of the best part of its army. And of course, it's laid waste to its own economy. So, the brutality continues. That's what he's got. He can continue to inflict civilian suffering, but not to any strategic point. And I think, look, you can see one of the things at secondhand, if you follow these debates on TV and Twitter, you can see that people have invested a lot in either defending Putin or being sort of disparaging Putin's enemies. They seem kind of hysterical and desperate because so much of this was about fear of declared power and the discovery that that all the sloppy democracies look pretty formidable right now.
Yeah,
and not just and not just their incredible sanctions power, but the Ukrainian army is doing so well in part because it was trained in NATO and U.S. techniques over the past 8 years. They said, you don't do it the Soviet way anymore, do it our way. And so people, I think, in places like China and India are saying, wow, if that's what the students of the United States look like, what does the United States look like?
That's a really great point. Well said. You wrote a piece for The Atlantic titled "A Nation Worth Fighting For." Ukraine claims something more than sympathy from the democratic world. It claims membership. Tell me a little bit about what the point you're making here is. I know it's to some extent historical.
Well, the piece started with a long-term relationship I've had with a group called the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter. which is a group that was founded by the Canadian Ukrainian diaspora is very large. I think there are as many people of Ukrainian descent in Canada as there are in the United States. And of course, so that makes them a much bigger part of the population. So I was talking about a very successful Ukrainian-Canadian businessman named James Tamerty. He made his money in electrical power generation. He's now a major installer of wind turbines all over the world, and someone I've known a little bit for a long time. And Tamerty was always offended and upset by this depiction of Ukraine as somehow a nation of Nazis. It's an important part of Soviet propaganda since the end of the Second World War. Look,
I'm sorry,
indeed,
a nation of what? I lost you.
A nation of Nazis, violent anti-Semites, murderous people, anti-Jewish. And this has been an important part of Soviet propaganda and then Russian propaganda since the war. And look, it was true that there were collaborators in the Ukraine, of course. There are collaborators in the Netherlands. 25,000 Dutch people volunteered to serve at the SS. The whole French government was collaborators. Spain sent a division to the Russion front and in 1941, and not only men but equipment too. That was true everywhere, and it was tragically true in Ukraine. But because the intimacy of the Ukrainian Jewish experience was so thick, there were so many Jews who lived there, you had all the extremes, from the best to the worst. So he began bringing together people of Ukrainian antecedents, Jewish and non-Jewish, in discussion groups starting in, I guess, the early 2000s. And although my antecedents are a little farther to the north and west, now Poland, I was interested in the group and observed some of their meetings and have read many of their publications. And so I was moved to call him around the war and say, sort of the vindication of the idea that this country is fighting heroically for independence. And not only is the president of the state Jewish, but so is the defense minister. And it sort of gives the lie to a lot of things that had been said about Ukraine. And so we started talking. So I wrote the piece about this tangled history between Ukrainians and Jews, and also about just the way we think about history generally, and how different societies have different heroes, and not everyone who's a hero in one society will be a hero in the other. But that doesn't mean that hundreds of years later that people with different memories cannot be good neighbors.
It's a really thoughtful piece, and I love how you came to that with the UJE. Is that who it is?
UJE.
Yeah, that's really interesting and important connection. I
want
to ask you.
Not to be confused, by the way, with the UJA, because the UJA will send you an invoice for your annual fundraising dues, and the UJE is free.
What is Putin doing, by the way, just to follow up to that the article and what you said, when he uses the word denazification? It's right. How do people, I understand we can believe just about anything these days. How does the Russian public, much less the Ukrainian public, look at the fact that their leader is Jewish and Putin is saying we have to denazify this country? And obviously there's a lot of other Jewish folks in Ukraine and always has been. So I don't understand how he's able to sell denazification.
Well, as a Ukrainian friend of mine puts it, it's true that Russian propaganda is very, very stupid, but you have to remember that the target audience for Russian propaganda is also very, very stupid.
How dare you?
So look, we have it's just the nature of propaganda. Just this morning, if you look at my Twitter feed, President Trump, through his Twitter access point, a spokeswoman named Liz Arrington, released a statement that the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve had dwindled to nothing under his predecessors, and he magically, that's his word, refilled it and restocked it and brought it to completion for the first time in its history in 50 years. So it's not like there isn't, on the Energy Information Agency, run by the U.S. government, there's a page where you can see week by week how much oil is in the Strategic Oil Reserve, dating back to its inception in the Carter administration. And, it took like 10 seconds of Googling and 40 seconds of screenshotting and pasting to put the answer, which is none of that is true, actually. But it's been pretty level constant. Sometimes up, sometimes down, but actually went down under Trump because he sold out in order to get the price of gas down for his reelection in 2020. So it's stupid propaganda, and yet the audience for whom Trump counts that no one is going to take the 8-second trouble to go look up, is this true?
Well, I hear you, and you tweeted, Trump lies about everything, even the strategic oil reserve. It's a believable thing if you didn't look it up. What's not believable is that a Jewish leader is also a Nazi. Like, I just don't understand how he's... And by the way, where are you, David, from on Nazification? Are you for or against?
Nazis are bad. But look, the Soviet propaganda back in the Cold War days, and a lot of far right and far left wing propaganda insists the state of Israel is a Nazi state. I mean, it doesn't have to make sense, because one of the things about totalitarian and authoritarian propaganda is it grants words a specific meaning. And so you can say the state of Israel is a Nazi state. You can say President Zelensky, the Jewish president of Ukraine, is Nazi. You can say they're Nazis even as you pound cities without regard to civilian casualties, and as you give soldiers permission to rape women as a weapon of war and terror. Ugh. You can call the other guy a Nazi because it doesn't mean anything anymore to you, because nothing means anything in that kind of propaganda.
Your last two pieces, I think, at The Atlantic are about probably the two most important stories this week, one might argue, if you're ranking them, I suppose. And I guess last week was when the Ginny Thomas texts came out. But they're titled "The Real Ginny Thomas Problem is Trump." And then the other piece is about the phone records, the missing phone records, which have come to light. 7 hours and 37 minutes. And this piece is titled "What Trump is Hiding." I mean, I think to some extent they're related over January 6th. Do you want to attempt to relate both these pieces, or would you prefer a specific question, which I am prepared for?
We'll do it your way. It's your show.
So Ginny Thomas is the wife of Clarence Thomas, and she is texting the chief of staff of the president of the United States. I'm not asking you what that means for Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court, although I'd love an answer on that. I'm asking you what that means for her role and her influence in the White House as it pertains to, I think, a pattern of influential people being in direct contact to the president without anybody knowing.
Well, there is some found comedy in the Thomas Meadows texts, because Meadows is pretty clearly keeping this crazy person in bay.
Okay.
Interesting. You make good points. How's the family? And I think it's pretty evident that if Ginny Thomas were not married to Clarence Thomas, that Meadows would not be so polite to her, because even by crazy person standards, she's a crazy person. That said, that she is the wife of a Supreme Court justice, and she was involved with all of this crazy drama. But she's been involved, Washington and I personally, we've all known her for a long time. And while she was probably somewhat more crazy in the Trump years than she was before, that's a pretty widespread affliction. It's not like she wasn't crazy before. But what happened before was she was not in a context where the president of the United States was engaged in these activities. And that's the thing that has changed, that was the powerful change. I'm sure she believed all kinds of wild things about Barack Obama. And I'm sure she said all kinds of wild things about Bill Clinton. But there wasn't the kind of authority structure where the president of the United States was engaged in trying to overthrow the government. And that's, the January 6th story is it's like almost too big to get into our brains. But the president of the United States was trying to overthrow the government of the United States. That's by violence, right? And that's the story about the phone logs. Look, so much of January 6th, again, as with the Trumpings, people find it hard to process because it wasn't secret. If there had come to light secret evidence of a president engaged in this kind of conspiracy, it would be the biggest story in the world. But Trump did everything on national television. He came right out and said, "I'm calling on my followers to go to Congress and attack Congress. You have to fight, be strong. Mike Pence can stop the election. I want you to go there and terrorize Mike Pence into doing just that." Oh, well, it's on TV. It can't be that bad because he's not trying to cover it up. But there were always two questions that would happen on January 6th, which is, was Trump involved in plotting this thing? Those people came by bus, many of them, to Washington. How'd they get there? Who organized that? Was Trump involved with that? And second, what was Trump's role in managing? And in particular, what was Trump's role in the long delay of sending the National Guard to assist the overwhelmed Capitol Hill police? And those 7.5 hours may contain answers to those questions. And they indicate that Trump was for 7.5 hours trying to keep his activities secret.
How come, do you know things that you can't print because as a journalist you don't have them corroborated, but you wish you could, that would lead you to think that there's something in these 7.5 hours or another detail that will implicate Trump in a more obvious or serious way? Without telling me, are there things that you're David Frum? I mean, you're not, you know everybody.
Well, what happens in journalism, they're not what you know, you really need to publish. But there are a lot of things you hear that you don't know. I mean, you hear that, and a lot of things you hear that are, by the way, that proof. The reason you don't do it is not because you keep a secret library of personal knowledge, but because a lot of things you hear turn out to be false. Right. People, because you talk to somebody who has the appearance of being in the position to know, and they tell you something, and then it turns out they didn't know. Right. So that's the origins of a lot of the rules of journalism. The two-source rule, getting people on the record if possible. They're about quality control. So you don't want to be the person. That's one of the things that's wrong with social media as a source of information. Is people post what they hear, and what you hear is often untrue, and it just gets better. Like people have all kinds of good stories, and they ultimately track back to somebody who just made them up. So you want to be really careful. So, yeah, you hear things all the time, but a lot of them turn out not to be true. Really, really well explained. Let me go back to your point, though, about Mark Meadows, Donald Trump's chief of staff, holding Ginny Thomas at bay because she's crazy. Let me try to split a hair about that in under 20 seconds. I would argue he held her at bay because allowing her to have access or be seen would look so terrible as things were. The reason I'm saying that is because Mark Meadows was the gatekeeper, even though there probably wasn't any gatekeeper because Trump let anybody in. And in the Oval Office during that time and up to that time were the craziest people with direct connection to the president. Lynn Wood, Rudy Giuliani, Pillow Man, Sidney Powell, Mike Flynn. They're probably Eastman seems pretty crazy. So Meadows couldn't keep those people out of his ear telling him that he had won and there were bamboo ballots from China and anything else. So it feels like as crazy as Ginny Thomas is, she was no more crazy than the names I mentioned who had direct access to him that Meadows couldn't prevent. Yeah, she's sort of it's crazy in the sense of she's like the Facebook fan of all of those people. At least they're the crazy principals, and she's like not even that. But yeah, one of the problems with this presidency, the president is surrounded with gatekeepers because you want to make sure that his time is not wasted or her time is not wasted, that the information getting to the president is authoritative. The president does see things that are unconfirmed, but you want them to be from quality sources. And you don't just there's a whole system of filtration. I mean, one way to understand what the White House is a giant system to filter information on the way up to the president and then to filter decisions on the way down and to follow up that the decisions actually are executed. Because there's a famous story about Harry Truman on his last days in office sitting at his desk and saying, poor Ike, he's going to come to this desk, he's going to sit down, he's going to say, do this, do that. Nothing will happen because it won't be like the Army at all. And it's true. I was a big in the Army, the general in command says do this, and things happen. And the president says do this, and the Senate says we'll see, and the Federal Reserve says take it under consideration. And the governors say maybe not, and even the federal bureaucracy says, well, we have that violates Rule of Procedure 1117B, sir. And so just getting things up and down. But what Trump would do is bypass that system and allow all these crazy people who should never be seen in the company of the president into his brain. And that's why he did things like have all these burner phones. I'm sure when you're president, it's irksome to have to go through. I mean, Barack Obama famously was impatient with the primitive technology of the White House compared to what you could use as a private citizen in the year. He was in 2008. The smartphone's new, and you're not allowed a smartphone as president. But it's for your own protection. It's not to infantilize you or isolate you. It's because smartphones are more vulnerable than government systems.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not even a fair question to ask you about the Bush White House or even probably Obama, because when Trump came into office, everybody had a phone or two. Burner phones were a thing. His whole family certainly knows about them. So I was going to just ask you, like, the abnormality or the illegality of the president of the United States saying, "Can I borrow your phone?" Like, if I'm the person that probably only, well, I'm sure there's a lot of powerful people, but if some powerful person, if the president asked me to use my phone, I might think, hey, am I going to go to jail the rest of my life if I give this guy my phone?
Presidents have been borrowing phones for a long time, but usually, I mean, somebody in Bush's vicinity, for example, would be saying happy birthday to his kids. And the president, hey, give me the phone, I'll say happy birthday.
Right. But there would still be a record of that.
Yeah, the thing is, like, it's happy birthday, and then we stop. Happy birthday, and would you join me in overthrowing the government? No, it's just happy birthday. I mean, the Bush administration was such a technological era ago. It's just, it's pre-social media, it's pre-smartphones. There were mobile phones. People in the first Bush term used pagers. I mean, it's just
right.
You tell back to the kids.
But presidential records matter. I mean, you're explaining why these records matter for so many different reasons.
Yeah, they matter above all. By the way, they matter for important national security purposes. So you're the new president of the United States, and your emissary sits down with a leader or Secretary of State from another country, and they say, your predecessor promised us this and that. So how do you know whether that's true or not? You need the records.
Right.
The record, because, because the government continues beyond the personality of the president of the moment. So you need to be able to say, oh, my predecessor did. Okay, well, I'm breaking the promise, or I'm honoring the promise. But it also is useful to say, my predecessor said no such thing. And with Trump, no one will ever know what he promised and didn't promise.
Last thing
on the other hand, the people we talk to may be as interested in him in covering it all up. So we may never hear about it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Great point. I guess the last thing I want to talk to you about is kind of combining, you've been writing about this, certainly tweeting about it, thinking about it, energy with economics, the high prices. You have a really interesting piece about food prices are spiking, and basically why you write, to some extent, that's a good thing. And I want to know the future of the world economy based on energy's role centered to that, because as we've learned, even if you don't think about these things or study them, when gas prices go up, it just makes sense that everything else goes up because it costs money to move things. So what is this war? We hear about this every time from every conflict. Obviously, energy is an issue or a tactic to shut it down somehow. What is the future of the world economy looking like with fossil fuels still at the center of it?
Well, I want to say about food prices, I didn't say that it was a good thing. I said it was not a bad thing for everybody. And that one of the things that happens when food prices go up is you pull into the world food economy a lot of places that had been out, and principally Africa, which is one of the areas that has the most undeveloped food potential. And there are a lot of barriers to African agriculture, some of them public policy, some of them just the sheer difficulty of transportation. Africa not endowed Africa with enough rivers, and the rails and roads are not as sophisticated as they need to be. But higher food prices are ways to bring African farmers into the world food economy, and that is going to be a very important thing in this coming century. For the energy shock is real and powerful. But it may reorient us, and especially our European partners, into understanding that we need to transition to a future of renewable energies plus nuclear power. For renewables, I keep insisting, the more you believe in renewables, the more you have to believe in nuclear power, because the deficiencies of each offset the other. Until somebody invents undreamt of storage capacity. You can't count on the wind to blow when you need it to blow. You can't count on the sun at all hours and at all times. You need something that is just ticking away in the background, that is always there, that human beings can dial up or dial down. And
the argument to that is the Earth will be melted before the next nuclear power plant gets built because they take so long.
Yeah, but a lot of the reason they take so long is it's not in the nature of things. It's our regulatory systems. Mm-hmm. It's our own, and plus there are a lot of them that are online right now that people are taking off. There's a nuclear power plant in California. One power plant produces 10% of the state's electricity, and people want to take it offline and replace it with what? One of the things we have seen in Europe is, as with the bad decisions the Germans have made since they began removing their nuclear program over the past decade, is replacing it usually turns out to be replacing with coal. And so a lot of energy policy is about rationally choosing better and worse and understanding, look, obviously nuclear is not as environmentally benign as wind or solar, but it's a lot more benign than coal. And if the goal is to get us to zero coal as fast as possible. And by the way, the world's coal use peaked a decade ago. We are on the downward slope. That a future without coal is visible, especially if we can strong arm the Chinese and Indians into burning less of it, which we can't do through green tariffs. Yeah, but meanwhile, we have another problem, which is the problem of natural gas, which is such an important fuel in Europe, and we have to get our European friends off Russian natural gas, which is cheap and available, and replace it with things. That's going to mean some degree of renewables, but it's also going to mean American or North American liquid natural gas. The United States and Canada together are the greatest natural gas superpower in the world, or they could be. But bringing that gas to market takes investment, and it takes investment over time, and we need to start working on this.
I really appreciate that answer. I'd love to talk more about energy and everything else, and I always appreciate your time. Hey, I'll ask you a final easy question. Have you changed any of your thoughts on regulated, legalized cannabis at all?
We've discussed this before. Clearly, the North America, Canada, and the United States are making that decision to experiment with it. Yeah. So we don't have to speculate. We are going to know, and we're going to know what the benefits in terms of fewer people with law enforcement problems are going to offset the problems of addiction and damage to the life chances of young people who use the drug at the impressionable ages under 25, and the brain is vulnerable. We'll see, and we're going to find out. We're going to do this one the hard way.
Right. David Frum, what a pleasure as always. I really appreciate you taking my call.
Oh, well, always a pleasure to talk. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, there he goes, David Frum. Please let him know that you heard him here on the show and that you liked him, because he's got like 1 million followers on Twitter, and whenever he listens, it's good for to get a lot of new listeners in here. So I hope you appreciated it. How was the phone quality? It was his phone. I figured out what the technical issue is, and I won't have that happen again. But I had to go to his phone, and let me know, because I think with headphones it was probably tolerable. But if not, let me know. I don't ever want you to feel like you're having a hard time listening. That's my worst nightmare, that you're not, and I feel the same way when I'm listening to podcasts. Like, what is going on with this audio quality? So sorry about that. I appreciate Frum for his time and you for listening to that. And now it's time to get to my Friday conversation with Christian Finnegan and Ophira Eisenberg, who are two of the most respected comedians in all of comedy. I obviously love them because I have them here every weekend, and you can see us tomorrow night if you're listening on Friday, and whenever you're listening. If you're listening past the 2nd of April, then the show is over. But on Saturday night, April 2nd, we'll be at the Howland Center in Beacon, New York. I hope to see you there. And now, I hope you'll follow Christian and Ophira on social media and buy all their stuff. And I feel like since they're on every week, I don't need to give them a full intro, but look into everything on their show notes. These are two of my favorite people, and we did it again. Another great, fun, thoughtful conversation with Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg, right now. All right, it's that time of week, and that makes me happy because I get to talk to Christian Finnegan and Ophira Eisenberg, and three of us performing tomorrow night in Beacon, New York, and we're going to talk all about it. But Ophira, before we let Christian even in, it is his birthday today. What do you want to say to him, and how should we shower him with both praise and insults before he's allowed to really even chime in?
Well, I want to do the classic comparison of who has the worst birth date, because, of course, your birthday being on April Fool's has to be something you have to deal with every year of your life in some sort of super annoying way. However, my birthday is the day after New Year's, which I will always say
That's
makes
worse.
it even
That's worse.
And mine
Thank you.
It's much worse.
And mine is on Halloween, which is, I think,
Holy crap.
the best.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
This makes it. There's all these reasons why people become who they are, and this is.
But, I want to say, what are you saying?
Like no compensating on our part at all.
I just want to say something thoughtful, which is I celebrate you here today because every week I get to talk to you, and you had the heart surgery and you had a lot. We all had a year, and I'm very happy that you are here for another trip around, and I'm very privileged that I get to be your friend and in your space, and I loved all of your hot take at the Oscars on Sunday night.
Well, thank you very much. And I want to nip this slightly in the bud, just because you guys were so effusively nice last week about the newsletter stuff, and so I don't want to make this turn into I don't want I already have a very large head, and it like
what are you talking about?
Large head.
I don't remember what newsletter. What are you talking about?
New music for olds.substack.com.
Oh, your newsletter, New Music for Olds.
Yes, which anybody could sign up for at this moment. Like you literally wouldn't even have to hit pause.
Oh yeah. I'm really enjoying it. I got the paid issue this week, which I'm very.
That's right.
It was very exciting to get. I felt.
I'm just doing the free one.
Felt very exclusive. Well,
whatever. Basic.
Okay. I would just like to say, since I've known you a long time, Christian, I feel really privileged to be in this space with you, because I feel like when we first met, I felt like, but I'm very overly sensitive. I was like, oh, this guy likes me. And then there was a period where I thought you didn't like me. But now I feel like you like me again. So
that's so funny that you got it switched like that. No. When did you? That's so weird. There has never been a moment ever where I have not been 100% in the Ophira Eisenberg.
That's not true. It's not true. When I told you I wanted to bring her in on our threesome, you were like, I used to like her, and then there was a long period where I didn't like her, but I guess I like her again.
True. Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah.
I did say that.
Yeah.
But that ended weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, Ophira and I have known each other forever. But I that bums me out that you ever thought that, but it does not surprise me because I am convinced that that is true of at least 100 people, and I'm probably only correct about 2/3 of them.
Yeah, no, this is what it's like to be. I mean, if you read anything in any book, they will just be like, oh, yeah, did you have any childhood trauma that you feel like all the time that people might not like you and you're looking for threats?
But don't you?
That's totally not true.
Don't you feel, how much of it do you think is a nature of being a comedian and where you see each other and career stuff? Because Mark Maron has really made that a very popular thing where he would have comedians on who he knew a little or just a tiny bit or a lot and basically have this type of conversation. I used to think, and everybody thinks that Mark didn't like him because I don't think he did. But like, I feel like that's not Mark Maron's thing. I feel like that's most comedians feel, as you just said. Me and Christian used to talk about it all the time. I used to not think I didn't think he liked me, and I didn't like him because he was successful, and I thought he didn't like me.
Oh,
so funny.
See, yeah,
and
there's so
the reality
many layers
is
to
always
this
that for the most part, the people that you think don't like you are really just not thinking about you, period.
You spit,
exactly.
you
I was going
spit
to say
on
that.
me.
Exactly. They're like, do you have a problem with me? And you're like, you are.
Yeah, exactly.
But to be fair, I came off stage one night, like one of the first times I ever saw Christian, and he spit on me.
That is true, but that was sexual.
See, you took it the wrong way. You saw it as a threat, and it was an opening.
That's right.
Exactly.
It was.
Yeah, it is like, and it's something I was saying to Cambry earlier today. As my career has matured, gone down, I have noticed that a lot of people who I thought were being nice to me were not really being nice to me so much as they're being deferential to a power dynamic.
Yeah, that happened.
Now no longer exists.
Sure.
That they've had more of a career and mine's ebbed slightly. And so now it's like, oh no, you're kind of a dick. You just were nice to me because the situation was different the most 10 years ago.
Concrete example of that happening, like a week after my final live show on Sirius XM, a person who was constantly asking to be on my show and who I put on the show, I sent out an email to my list. This is my update. And that person blocked the email. Like, done with me.
Whoa.
Like, you asked me to be on the show all the time and you literally like blocked being on my email list. It was just like such a concrete example of what you're talking about. Here I am in corporate media with a national show. Oh, you're leaving? Okay, bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
Every industry,
and sometimes
sure.
I wonder, have I unwittingly done that to people and just didn't realize it? Because, there's a guy, and I'm not going to say his name because it's not his whatever. There's a place that opened up in Astoria, kind of like that, essentially, basically copying what my wife is doing, like to the extent like show titles being the same, events that were a lot of the events she was doing before the pandemic that she couldn't afford to do. Now all of a sudden this place is doing with some of the same producers.
Oh, you're talking about that new bar GED?
That'd be funny, a dumbed down version of QED. But it sucks. And a comedian who literally got his start at QED, like his first New York City open mic was at QED. And I personally, it was when my wife was out recovering from breast cancer, I introduced him to like the hosts and made sure he felt comfortable and all that. And now he's doing like a half an hour headlining thing next month at this place down the fucking street. And I guarantee you, and he's one of these quote unquote nice guy comedians, like, that, which is the phoniest bullshit in the world. But and I'm sure that if you asked him, he would not even realize that he had done anything wrong, because it's such a comedian brain, but specifically a guy comedian brain of kind of just this goldfish, like, oh, I just go where the opportunities are and I don't think about it one way or the other. And it's like, all right, well, you seem to think about it when you were kissing our asses when you first moved to New York City, and it doesn't seem to be on your mind so much these days. Right. And so,
do teachers, like, I'm thinking, is this a comedian thing? Is this a show business thing? I'm sure it's probably the kind of behavior in a lot of different industries, from real estate to, but like, do teachers do that? By the way, we all know you're talking about comedian John Fish, Christian, but
absolutely
such a prick. But I mean, like, is this common, do you think? And like this kind of, you cozy up to people while they've got power. I mean, I'm sure it's true. Probably the PTA president.
Yeah. Opportunists everywhere.
And I don't even think it's a conscious thing. I think it's sort of just, I see, it's like when a plant stretches towards the light. Do you know what I mean? That like, if you put a plant by the window, it'll just start arcing towards where the sun is. And if you turn it around, it'll go the other way. That's the way, and we've all had that experience. And I hope that I haven't done it as much as other people. We've all had that experience where you're at some comedy event and you're talking to a comedian and you can see their eyes scanning the room, trying to find someone with more power and prestige. And then you'll bump into them the next day at the airport or whatever. And then they have all the time in the world for you.
Right. Yeah. I also think there is a thing potentially where they just go, but you're fine. I am the one that needs stuff.
Probably.
Like, I didn't even, this sort of like, I thought you didn't care because you guys are here. Like you have,
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
Well, my therapist is a real public radio lover, and I feel like she doesn't like me as much now.
That is crazy.
Less. I swear.
Crazy.
I swear.
Why do you? Have you said that to her?
I said that I think you're less interested in therapizing me now that you know that I don't work. Because she was always sort of like try to get a little inside.
Yeah, sure.
She'd be like, "Oh, it's difficult over there. Why? Who?
What's Brian Lehrer
what did she?
Yeah, and I would always be like, I didn't work at WNYC. I don't see those people. Yeah.
Why is Terry Gross so perfect?
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Such a good interviewer.
Have you ever run into her?
I think she prepares a lot. What did your therapist say when you said that?
Yeah, how did she respond?
She said, "Oh my goodness, no. But I'm raising my rates. I am raising my rates."
It's rough. It's rough. We don't see things as we are. We see them as they are. We see them as we are. I ruined that.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So I always say to people that, there's no gold watch in this business. Yeah. There's no hey, 20 years, you're officially an elder with seniority. It's like, nope, none of that. Let's get out of the way.
Okay, just back to your birthday. Have you been plagued with birthday pranks or something?
I had a bit on it on one of my early albums, just about how, it must be because you're such a fool, right? It's just, it's the same lame joke every year. I mean, it's just the most uninspired. And it's like, if you even thought about it for 5 seconds, you must know I've heard that joke before. Like, you must. Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same for everybody. Like, if you have a name like
Iceland. I talked to a woman today named Iceland. I just decided to move past it. I was like, that's nice. It was the receptionist I was talking to.
Iceland. Wow.
I just couldn't. I couldn't comment. I was like, this person has dealt with comments every single time. I'm not doing it. I go, that's a nice name.
I last time I got groceries, I said, oh, do I get the neighborhood discount? And then I said, how many times a day do you hear that? And the guy said, 50. I was like, what? How about I used to work in a grocery store? How often did you hear that? He's like, yeah, another 50. I was like, oh my God.
You know what's weird about Pete's friend Iceland is that she's actually a really warm person, but her friend Greenland is very cold.
That's right. How did you know that? How did you know that? Speaking of which, folks, the Iceland in the room is that I've been waiting all week to talk to you about the slap, because even though Christian had, honestly, it is interesting when something happens that everybody witnesses, the quickest takes, because your take is not polluted or influenced by somebody else's. And Christian had 2 quick ones, which I thought were dead on. And one of which was something about the avalanche of think pieces. Like, it's just overwhelming to imagine how much talk this is going to get. But I do think we're 3 comedians, and there is I think an interesting thing for at least us to talk about what this if this means. I don't think it means, everybody's asking, that audiences are going to be more empowered to strike back against comedians. I don't necessarily see that. I think they're going to be equally as empowered as they always have been. But do you think there's anything, is this a fair question for us to discuss here, please?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, one, it's nice that finally there's something that they can't blame the Jews for. That's like a win. But
we can find a way. Didn't they produce it? Don't they own isn't Oscar a Jew?
Oscar's a Jew. Are you letting the dog in? Letting the dog out? No. I mean, every comic on every stage this week has been like, don't think this is what you can do. And that was also, my first take. I was just like, oh my God, this is going to empower everyone to be like, yeah, this is what we can do to comics. Because there's already been such a backlash. So many comics have dealt with the backlash just about what they've said about whatever. I mean, a tasteless joke is one thing, but it's just like, whether they're actually truly doing racist material or sexist material, or just perceived in a way that people are like, that's not cool, and comics not wanting to do colleges because they feel like they can't say what they want to say, all of the stuff. And now the idea that you could physically retaliate. But I think we all can agree that no audience member is going, I'm just like Will Smith.
Christian, thoughts?
Again, it is, I almost feel a little, I'm sorry. My reactions to it now have far less to do with the event itself than they are to what it's dug up in people and people's rationalizations. And to me, it wasn't so much that this was going to encourage further violence. To me, it was a sign of just how much closer to violence everybody is all the time right now. To me, I tie it to like people hitting flight attendants, to all that shit.
I totally agree with you. And I started thinking about, I guess Mad Max was the first that, sort of futuristic future apocalyptic movies that are sci-fi, just about how there was a depiction at one point of the future where everyone it's like a very clean environment and everything is very controlled.
White gowns and
this, everyone is sort of like happy-esque. And there's also the other side where it's just civilization has devolved into rampant violence and gladiator fights for fun. It's like these things that we're like, oh, we don't do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's where we're at. Like, I don't think other than the news, I have ever seen random violence on television, like real violence.
Yeah, and that's, and I saw a few people, and it's so tiresome. I do understand that for a lot of black people, when they feel, I'm taking a guess here, that when there is sort of a coalescence of anger towards a black public figure, there is a natural desire to want to circle the wagons and to sort of, and I understand that. I'm not even saying it's negative or positive or whatever. I just understand it. But to see a lot of like white people, one comedian specifically who was like, I just don't understand why all these white people feel like they have the right to comment on this. Like,
there's a lot of that.
Spit this one out. It's like, no. One of the biggest celebrities in the world got on stage and hit another one of the biggest celebrities in the world in the face on a live broadcast watched by millions of people around the world. I don't think anyone needs a permission slip to have an opinion about it. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah.
100%.
In my humble opinion,
I've said this a couple times in the podcast already this week, but I'll say it one more time, which is I saw David Pakman, I like him. He's a liberal YouTube commentator. He's like tweeted, can someone just give me a hot take because I'm so over this, like the next day. And like saying like, let's stop. There are bigger issues, and he talks about those issues every day. And I was like, this seems like a big issue for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. I don't think we can't have a conversation about it as well as the invasion and climate. Like, we can do a bunch of things at once, and this can be one of them. I often think things are distractions and manufactured for such reasons, and we should not talk too much about them. And I think about that editorially here, but not this case. I think it's fine to discuss.
No, because it's very accessible to all of us in a way that the war in Ukraine is not.
That's right. And people feel like these are their heroes. They feel intimately connected to these two people.
Yeah,
they're like, Will Smith. I mean, the amount of people that are like, Will Smith was my hero, and now how do I feel? Whether they're just like, I posted something very banal just about it on Twitter, and someone wrote back that the thing where they were just like, well, that's what happens when you do a tasteless joke kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just wrote back, I never write back, but this time I was like, I don't condone violence. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be like,
that's not what happens.
No.
And you could literally plug any person, any people into this scenario, and I feel like our opinion on it would remain consistent. Whereas I feel like a lot of people who are dissembling and backpedaling and trying to defend it, if you were to replace Will Smith with Ryan Reynolds, if Chris Rock or whatever, a white comic, if Bill Burr had made a joke about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds got on stage and punched him in the face or slapped him in the face, I don't want to overstate it, slapped him in the face, I don't think there'd be so much hem-hawing about who was in the wrong here. I think it's pretty obvious. You can't do it. Did you say it's her? Blake Lively? It's her fault?
Yes, it's her fault.
I thought you said it was her.
I thought I would always blame the woman in such an instance. I think
it's also amazing that the show just went on. I mean, like in that way that you're just like, and then there was just no one ever going like, excuse me?
I just think everybody is shell shocked. There's so many people, so much of the Oscars is keeping it going. Do you know what I mean? That it was just like, go, just keep going.
Have you ever
could see Chris Rock make that process of just being like, okay, let's keep it going.
For comedians and anybody who's ever had to host an event, it was so uncomfortable to see, leaving that aside, that a terrible thing happened that everybody witnessed, and then the show must go on. Literally, he had to move on. He made such a bold choice to do that because I guess he was there to present this award. He flew out there to present an award to, I guess, his friend Questlove. But have either of you ever been in a situation while hosting a show or being on a show where something you had to make a judgment call, like, do I keep this show going? Because I will start by saying, once a guy had like a heart attack at a show, or we thought, and I stopped the shows during my set. I was the headliner at this gig in Staten Island. Don't want to brag. Can't remember who books it, so don't ask. But I stopped the show, and his friend, I'll never forget, looked up at me and said, "Keep going. Don't stop doing the show. Just don't pay attention to us." I was like, No, I won't. I'm concerned that something. Have you guys ever?
Everyone in the room is watching what's going on right now. And if I just kept talking about like my daughter's soccer practice, I would look insane right now.
The guy goes. Seriously, the guy goes, "Clear." He hit the paddles, and then they're like, "2 jokes." I was like, I can't. No.
No. I mean, I've known a lot of people to have been in shows where someone has had made a heart attack or some sort of medical event during the show, and I think about those stories, and I feel like all the shows went on. So did you stop?
Well, I said, should I keep going? If I stop, do I still get paid? I said to the guy booking it. Yes, I stopped. Like 100%. But they were really mad at me. They're like, you're drawing attention to him. I'm like, he just fell down. And it's not everybody knows what's happening. And by the way, the other thing that I'm reminded by is this isn't new. That a comedian would be like this idea that, there's going to be more of this. One of my favorite and least favorite videos of all time is that comedian who was playing the guitar and smashed it over an audience member's head and then like try to keep playing.
And it's so great because he hits the guy in the head. Yeah. And the guy is like talking flack or whatever, but the comedian definitely was angry and
way overboard,
way out of context,
way out of control.
Bashed him over the head with a guitar, and then he goes, "You guys all saw him coming, right?"
Yeah.
And then there's just silence, and you hear one guy from the audience go, "Not cool, man."
Yes, I'll find that. I gotta find that. I'm gonna play that at Hangout tonight.
Oh, please, it's the greatest.
I made fun of a woman that was drunk in the Hamptons at a gig, and she was there with a whole bunch of friends, and it was mild. Like, I think I was just like, "You got to keep it down, drunky McGee." Like, it was something that mild, and she stormed the stage to hit me, and I remember just backing up, going, "Is anyone going to do anything?"
Yeah.
And no, nobody did anything.
What was it? Was it a private gig or something? It wasn't a club.
It was Stephen Talkhouse, so it was a club. But it was like everyone did know each other there because it's like a small community of people that were up there. So most people knew each other. And her friends basically were like, "Marsha, get off the stage," and basically shamed her into. But I was just going like, "This is how this is going to end. I'm going to get someone punching me in the face. Like, this is how this is going to go." And then they got her off stage, and I did feel pressure to be like, "Okay, so dating's hard."
Yeah,
totally. That's the thing is, I remember I was in the Stardome in Alabama once, and I was like 10 minutes into my set, and I hadn't done any political material because I'd never performed in Alabama before, and I was on my P's and Q's. But I think if you're a certain type of person, you look at me and you're like, "This guy is not on my team." I just can tell. And some guys started yelling from the audience, I've been to war. I'm fighting for your freedom of speech. I've seen people die. And there's a railing, and he was holding on to the railing with both of his hands. And there's like 5 of the staff trying to yank him out of the room. And it took probably a good 10 minutes to get him out of there, which is an eternity when you're on stage. And then I killed for the next 15 minutes. I killed making jokes about it, just because we'd all had this cathartic experience again. And the minute I went back into like material, there was just a collective like, "Oh, now I just want to go home."
Right.
Like,
right.
But isn't
exactly. We've all dealt with this.
We're talking about it as comedians, but anybody listening and all of us can also relate to that in real life. Meaning, when someone disrespects you, slights you, or you have an argument with a loved one, even, which is usually the most hurtful type of things, do you just move past it and change the subject? Because a lot of people deal with things that way. It's an avoidance technique. I can't. Like what happened the other night at the Oscars, or whether what we're talking about in our show, there's no possible way for me to to move on. I have to get to closure as fast as I can, including if that means I have to come up with the most authentic, real apology because it was my fault. Like, I cannot sit there for very long and in a fight with a person in my life, or even in like a real awkward moment. Like, I gotta settle that. I can't move on.
Yeah. Well, some people are venters, right?
I'm not saying what's right or wrong.
They get it all out in the moment, and then they feel better. They're like, now I'm done. And I'm exactly the opposite. Yeah. I'm like thinking about, and the wheels are turning.
God, yeah. And if you get me to that point, it's like, it's rude for you to then all of a sudden transition to what's the big deal.
Right.
Like, it's like, if you got me to the point where I'm like losing my shit, then it's like, no, we're now in shit losing territory for the foreseeable future.
The only other point that I really wanted to make to you guys about, the other night was, and I've asked for our gig on Saturday night at the Beacon, at the Beacon in Beacon, New York, at the Howland Center. I probably should have ran this past you guys, but I did already tweet this out that I'm going to need the audience to tell us their entire medical history because I don't want to offend anybody. I just try not to make assumptions. I do, but that's like a therapy thing. And the idea that Chris Rock knew about Jada Pinkett Smith because she had talked about it, it's missing me. Anybody who says that, it's missing me. Maybe he'll say he did. But like the idea that you're going to know that somebody has had a thing in their life, anything. I mean, I've talked with both of you about your entire life history. Like, it makes me understand you better. I'm glad. But like, imagine if I had said something about breast cancer, Ophira. I mean, like, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't like
it wasn't front of mind, Yeah. Even if you knew it, you're not thinking it constantly.
But it's true of life too. Like, I didn't know that I didn't know you had Crohn's. Sorry.
Right. I don't know.
I mean, it does. It does get into weird territory. It's not a cut and dry thing, but it is, a little silly to assume that because she had gone public with it, that Chris Rock is like,
or anybody.
What's Jada Pinkett Smith's health news? Right. Like, I know my Google alert for Jada Pinkett alopecia went off.
Right.
And even if he was, who cares? It doesn't matter.
I know, that's the thing.
It doesn't matter.
Feel like it doesn't matter. I mean, it goes back to like, it's just words. Like, I know, but I'm Noam Chomsky. Yes, words, language has power, etc. I get it, but in the comedy context, it's just words.
Right.
Just like.
And tame words, very tame words.
Really tame words.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting because she's not ugly, obviously, in any sense of the word. But I was just thinking, like, if he just went, God, Jada, you are so fucking ugly, that would have somehow seemed less than this. Actually, I'm not going to say thoughtful because I don't think it was the greatest joke, but you have to do a couple steps in your head to be like, oh, G.I. Jane, this, that, like, and somehow that was like unbelievably offensive. But if you just went like, your face is disgusting, everyone would have just been like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I didn't really get it, but whatever.
Exactly.
What about the other thing? I keep hearing this word tasteless. I think Ophira already used it, or classless, or like, what is the Academy Awards? Who is in the audience? Because one of the rules I've always found with comedy is that you can only make fun of wealthy, famous people for 2 jokes. On joke 3, they get mad, they get offended, or say at the, especially, well-known athletes, they don't want, like the ESPYs, they don't want to be made fun of. They don't like it. They're not comfortable with it. They're offended by it. But I'm hired to do comedy. Sorry.
Right.
That's what you're in the audience.
And that's especially true of somebody like Will Smith, who really seems to look at his Hollywood career more like an athlete looks at their career than as sort of I don't want to say an artist, as if being an artist is better, but do you know, like he's not Christian Bale or like some, method actor type. He's not the guy from Succession. He seems to look at like, I want to be the biggest movie star in the world, and then I want to be the most respected movie star in the world, and I'm going to attack them with the same level of sort of athletic sort of discipline. Do you know what I mean?
Who says that they're a vessel for God?
Yeah.
I mean, God? Seriously, God is talking. You're just going to say that out loud in terms of your Oscar for the okay.
I've always had the opinion that people who say that they're blessed, 90% of the time, what they're really saying is, I'm awesome. And this is my socially acceptable way of saying that.
No, I mean, you know what? You know when I like a God complex and megalomania? I like it in a surgeon, honestly. That's where I think it belongs.
Or a pilot. Yeah, that's
Those
good.
are the people that should feel like they are channeling God as they open you up and rearrange shit inside of you to save your life.
Did you guys think of any sort of jokes that you like? Did you sort of game plan it? Like if you were the comedian on stage, like what you would have said
Yes.
or how you reacted? Did you?
I would just hope that I could take a punch that well or a slap.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
I mean, I was just like, just the mere fact to be able to like turn around and not have a handprint on your face and just be like, okay. Wow.
I think that when he said, the first thing he said was the automatic best thing first. He acknowledged what everybody saw, and with the words he used, he said, wow, Will Smith just slapped the shit out of me, which is what happened. And in a weird kind of way, that's hilarious, because if a famous person, even if you're famous, but if a famous person attacks you, that will change your life forever. If Kevin Costner slapped me in the face, I'd be like, I tell people that the rest of my life. One time Kevin Costner slapped me in the face.
Yeah.
Instead, he just taught me to fly fish, but I don't want to brag about my relationship with him. But that's what I think, that what he said was hilarious, stating the obvious. And what he said after that, you could see, his thoughts are swimming, and he wanted to go into comedian mode, but he knows he's supposed to keep the show going, and and you could see him look off to the stage, and you could see him make the sort of decision like, all right, I got to get back. I don't have the right to sort of turn this into the me show, right? That's a good point.
Yeah, and he's probably like, I'm going to get the hell out of here. Also,
the joke I wish he had said is, it's like, never going to make Sea Org now. That's a Scientologist. That's the highest level of Scientology, but which would have been very funny for 20 people. But
all of Hollywood, and by that you mean all of Hollywood. All of Hollywood.
Yeah, he probably would have gotten blacklisted for that.
I will say that Will Smith's elocution of keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth was amazing. Like, you didn't have to be a lip reader to figure out those words. I mean, it was like amazing. I was like, wow, yeah, that don't need you could have a bouncing ball to that. Yeah. It's like so clear he wanted those words perfectly said.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The second time, that was the second time. Wow.
But then I was just like, did Jada and Chris Rock sleep together? I mean, that's where my brain went too. I was like, oh, they must have had sex. Because
and people
really that I never
told.
I was like, why would someone be angry?
Well, that joke he told, and I'm sure you've seen people reference, he made that Jada Pinkett joke in 2016.
Yes.
About
you're not even invited. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is funny. And I'm sure that was probably in the back of their minds. I'm sure it was a discussion that Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith had in private conversation. But now I feel like this conversation has devolved into just more, I don't know.
Celebrity stuff.
Yeah.
Harry Potter said he didn't want to comment on it.
I saw that today, and I thought, because Harry Potter he's a human named Daniel Radcliffe that you don't respect, but I do.
He's a Jew.
He said, I don't want to say anything about this because I feel like everything's been said, or I don't want to make a boring. I forget what he said, but I was
he was like, I'm so bored of this. Basically,
I was like, if you're a celebrity and you don't have an opinion, that's an opinion. But at the same time, a lot of people don't know what this. Like, you actually don't have a smart take on things. But
I think that was a very deft and because like, why should I be a part of this story? Like, we can have opinions on it because nobody really gives a shit. No offense to any of us.
Well,
but it's just like, he's there to promote a movie. It's like, you're going to try to drag me into
that'll be the thing.
This lazy fucking junket journalist is going to try to get a headline out of this. No, fuck you.
Okay, so here we go. Let's do what we're going to do. We'll rehearse it at the end of the show tomorrow night.
Okay. Yeah.
We're going to do a Q&A, and this is going to be we're going to try this out, and we're going to do it at future shows that we're trying to book right now. We all go up, we do some comedy. Well, you guys do. I basically make observations about my drive there and who's in the audience because I don't have an act. And I don't get out much.
What's up with Route 42?
But I'm really looking forward to this. So people can ask whatever they want to ask, and we're smart mouths, and we'll give them not only an answer, but most likely the right answer that will probably change their life. So whether it's a really
we're going to help them.
Yeah, we're going to help. Whether it's a thoughtful question, a mundane question, whatever. But I'll go first. I'll ask you guys what I think. And we'll take these questions from the audience. And if they want to send them to us, by the way, for next week's show, hopefully you guys will be able to join me here in the podcast and maybe we could have some fun with that. Any question you have for Christian, Ophira, and we will answer it. How did I do?
Great.
Sounds good.
Okay, so my question for you guys is, one extra way for me to make money here with the podcast is to do ads. And I'm not really doing them right now that much because, I don't love it. But what I would love to do is do an ad and make money and get paid for a product that I really like and use and believe in. So if you could get paid with your celebrity, with your following on social media and on stage to promote an actual product that you truly use, buy, believe in, whether it's a life changer or just makes your life more simple, something you've been committed to, whether it be a bar of soap or anything else, what would you sell if you could sell? Are you ready? Do you need mine?
Please, give me yours.
You go with yours.
I want to sell the Ego line of lithium battery powered lawn tools, the lawn mower and the blower. I want to do live reads. So much. I want to do live reads for those. Yeah.
You are the suburban dad I always wanted to be friends with.
I feel like
you've got a leaf blower and
I got the trimmers, the hedge trimmers, the weed whacker, the lawnmower, and the blower. All that line. That company, Ego, is the name of it.
It's called Ego.
EGO.
Yeah,
they know exactly who they're marketing to.
You're going to feel so good at yard work.
Well, it's not like those anything electric is less masculine than anything fossil fuel powered, car, lawnmower, chainsaw.
That's true. So they have to add in.
Yeah. So
okay, I have a really stupid one, but you've inspired me.
Okay.
And it's right beside me. So this I'm bringing into the frame for people who are listening. You don't know, but this is a water bottle. It's a Contigo water bottle.
Yep.
And it is the only one I like. And I have lost this water bottle. I've lost it. So now actually when I leave the house, I don't bring it with me unless I know it's like a hike. But if I won't bring it to a club because I fear of losing it. So I have backup imposter decoy water bottles that I know I can lose. And why do I like this one so much? Because it's insulated. It's the right size. It is not these crazy, you know how you see people walking around with like 10-pound Poland spring
size
bottles?
matters.
Like you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
No. 24, and it's one, you use one hand for it. I don't have to twist off something and lose it.
That's a good point.
I don't understand why people, it's got a button in it, you could put in the dishwasher. I don't understand why this is not every product.
Well, you're selling that well. And so Ophira says I do feel like she's being a little lazy and sold a thing that was literally on her desk, but fine.
Because I have it with me all the time.
All right, fair enough.
That's why.
Christian, what's the product? What's your live read product that you wish you could sell and get paid for?
Mackenzie cock rings are, in my opinion, the best.
I love the Scottish cock ring.
Scottish made.
Mackenzie cock rings.
Okay, you guys have any? Or should we end this? I love it. Any question for the panel?
I have a question.
Do I get to? No, do I have a real answer? Do I get to do a real?
Oh, you want to do a real one?
Course.
I like Mackenzie cock rings.
Mackenzie cock rings.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, top 5 of the cock rings I've tried.
What is that in your hand?
Have I talked about this back scratcher and how amazing it is?
No.
And how you can go get a back scratcher now. You can just do that. And for some reason, I haven't had one for like 30 years. And I don't know why. Because I am not in good enough shape that I can reach every area of my back with total ease. And I have a bit of a little thing that my wife wants me to go to a dermatologist and get checked out on my shoulder blade that itches. And I just, one day I was like, why don't I have a back scratcher? why the fuck don't? And this is a Cactus back scratcher, and it is extendable. You can extend it,
baby.
and it's got like a side that has like bigger points, and the other side is kind of like different parts. There's like the soft end, and I can't get it in camera.
It looks like an antenna with a rubber weapon on the end.
Yes,
of it.
Like
it does look kind of
spiky spatula.
Yep.
Yeah, a spiky spatula.
Well said.
And you can go down this way, or you can go underneath, and you can have the length you want. And it also, the dogs love it. And there's just no reason. It was like $14 or something.
I was immediately thinking about how you clean that.
I will say the best part of you telling us about that and describing why you need it was when Ophira, like, she should be doing this read with you. When you sell this, you're like, because I can't reach that. And Ophira, with all the empathy and authenticity, said, who really can?
Yeah, that's very QVC.
Who can?
I always love those. Like, like I've always hated those commercials where remember those Pert Plus, Pert Plus, which was shampoo and conditioner in one, and they'd be like, and they would show somebody in the shower with like 2 different shampoo bottles, and they couldn't hold on. It's just too many, and they're like falling,
struggling.
Wow, somebody save me!
I love that. It's like, have you been having a hard time boiling water, and like pans are falling on their head and stuff?
Okay. Do we have any more? Well, let's do one more. I have a guy. Have a guy waiting for my COVID test in the driveway.
That's standard.
I have an intern in my driveway.
This is a weird question. If you had to choose, like when doing something, if you had to choose between getting something out there, so speed, versus making it the best possible, so closer to perfection.
Yeah.
Where's your line? What do you go for?
Mine is for sure. That's a good question, and it's a serious question. You automatically think about your album, your podcast, Christian's new newsletter, whatever it might be. And my thing is, I'm certainly not a perfectionist, but I don't want it to not work. I don't want it to be broken. I don't want to send something out. The podcast every day, like I try to refine it, and then there's a 30-second gap of silence. Fuck. So I'm not a perfectionist, but I try to do a pretty good job on the thing. So I would probably go more with being thorough over speed on a thing. But I think sometimes it's just good to get it out there too. So depends what we're talking about. I
do think there's a generational aspect to this, that I think that younger people, having grown up in the sort of TikTok, Instagram world, they're much more comfortable with speed and getting stuff out there. And I think it actually enhances their work, because I think that when you are prone to hyper analyzing and rewriting things, I'm a really slow writer, because I'll rewrite the same paragraph 1,000 times, and I'll rewrite it so many times that when I finally send it out, there'll be a typo in it because I've changed it so many times and I can't see it anymore. And, I went from first person to third person and didn't even notice. I think that I would like to be more speed oriented. That's why I need deadlines, even though they make me crazy, because without a deadline, I'll just keep, picking at the scab forever.
Do you ever do that thing with the rewriting where then, maybe like a month later you find the first draft? Because I've saved like 1,000 Word documents, so disorganized, and you'll read it and go, oh, that was fine.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Like 100%. It's but you fuck with it so much that you start to lose it, and now I don't even know how to find it again. And I can't.
Brutal. You're making, again, this happened before we started recording with Ophira, and now you're doing it. The whole time you're making your points, you're gesticulating with that fucking back scratcher, like you keep waving it around, and I'm like, I feel unsafe. What are you going to do to me with that thing? He just extended it. He just pulled it out.
Can you bring it to the Howland Center?
Absolutely.
Yes, that's a good idea. Bring it out. Sell them. You should sell them now. It's your thing.
Oh, you should
put your logo on it.
Oh, my God. Absolutely. Christian Finnegan back scratcher. That'd be the best, most original merch.
Okay. Do you have one, Ophira, or should we wrap?
That was Ophira's.
That was mine.
Oh, that was Ophira's. That was good.
Yeah. So you went for speed. You went for speed on that one.
5 seconds.
Okay. My question is,
yes,
all of the cast of Friends is going to die, and you can only save one of them.
Oh.
But whoever you save, you have to then spend every waking minute of your life with.
That's great. That's thoughtful. And my daughters are watching Friends.
Like they're basically like, Siamese twins. You're handcuffed to that person for the rest of your life.
Huh.
I don't have an answer. I just
This is like, I feel like this is like F, Marry, Kill. Like I want to work my way through each one of them. It's like Matthew Perry's he looks like he's in bad shape, so he's probably not going to make it no matter what.
Well, yeah, no, I'm talking characters, not talking actors.
Okay.
Characters.
Okay.
Characters.
Okay.
Characters welcome.
Another defunct branding by a network.
I'm going Rachel.
Yeah, I would almost too. It was my first impulse, and then I was like, "Oh God, what does it say about me?" And then I'm back at it.
But I like Chandler. He's the funniest, quickest witted, and self-deprecating, and I like his facial expressions and stuff.
He's definitely smart.
Mm-hmm. But I want to be with Rachel. So.
Oh, for like sexy stuff, you mean?
Yes. Okay. I mean, I have to.
I should have stipulated that there would be no romance involved, but
you're just handcuffed.
Yeah, you're handcuffed to that person. You just have to like be around that person, like trapped in an elevator type deal.
Right. If I was with Rachel, the character, I would probably feel lesser than all the time, which maybe is good. Maybe that would just be like a.
I feel like the safe answer is Joey.
God, no, annoying.
Yeah.
Too
I don't even really
irritating.
watch Friends. I don't know why. You just put me on the pressure.
I love this, though.
It's a good one. I like it. And I like that you made it have to be the characters that made it that much harder to think about.
I know.
So this is just a little bit of what you'll get if you come to our shows, but you're going to be the ones asking.
Come anyway, though.
And
it's just at the end. You can leave.
So looking forward to that. You'll be asking the questions, and maybe if you want, submit some. Email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, and send your questions for next week's conversation, and we will try to answer them there. It'll make this conversation that much more fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I can't wait to see you in the flesh tomorrow, and I'm very excited. Thank you very much, as always.
Thanks, Pete.
Happy birthday, Christian. All right, there they go. Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg, and oh man, what a week. Thank you to all of my guests this week. Thank you to all of you who have listened, especially those who are paying subscribers. If you aren't, then please sign up, standupwithpete.com, standupwithpete.com, patreon.com/Pete Dominic, and sign up now, folks. All right, that's it. Get all the benefits of that. Great time hanging out with everybody on Thursday night. I am actually now recording this after it was over, and I loved it. It was a great time, as always, so thank you for that. I hope you have an awesome weekend, and I'll talk to you Monday. John Carroll, play us out. Will you please, sir?
When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep in sight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up, you got to stand up, you got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why leave the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll take